Good morning, everybody. This is Adam Gordon and my colleague,
Fred Cohen.
Fred Cohen, and we are Oya Security Growth, and we help grow cybersecurity companies. Fred is a luminary in the cybersecurity field. How do you feel about that, Fred?
Oh, I feel illuminated now that you
Oh,
brought it that way.
enlightened, I'm sure. And
I'm
I
not
am
enlightened. I'm a luminary. I'm not a light for others to follow. I'm just a luminary. So I'm only illuminated, not
not enlightened.
not lighted. I
Ah,
would be
okay.
delighted, I guess, if I was no longer a light.
Yes, I suppose you would, which would give an odd twist to the whole thing. Anyway, and I am not a luminary, but I am a senior marketing person who is a great storyteller, and my companies have had over $2 billion in exits. So storytelling works pretty well, I've decided. And we discuss the intersection of marketing and cybersecurity and storytelling and cybersecurity. And the general game here is that I do some research and Fred doesn't know what we're going to talk about. And so we have a live discussion about whatever topics we think are going to be most interesting.
So I notice you've changed the logo here, the picture from that partially colored last one into the new picture.
Yes.
So does that mean we're creating that tornado of activity surrounding us because we're now up in the higher number of podcasts and more contacts?
Exactly.
And the RSA conference last week, that was an opportunity to see lots of people, meet things. So what did you think of it?
I thought that it was hugely confusing from an outsider's standpoint. Just coming into the cybersecurity field, it's hard to get a big picture to understand what the environment looks like and who actually plays which role where, because it's clear that nobody has like a solution that could possibly morph into whatever you need it to. You need to build something for your particular needs, and that looks hard.
Well, there are managed security service providers, MSSPs,
Sure.
but they, again, only, look, it's a complex field, right?
No.
We're talking about, malicious, people and how you deal with malicious people. So, but there's another thing that sort of is more, I think, important, and that is, besides the fragmented nature of the field itself, there's the issue of, what you thought of the booths and the presentations and the marketing material. So how bad was it?
Well, as trade shows go, I'd say it was probably about average. I've certainly seen much worse than that. The last years of Comdex were certainly really, really awful. um, and again, everybody knows their little thing, and nobody really seems able to tell me a bigger picture of this is, this could be part of this, or this could be part of this. So,
Well, except me, right?
Except you, which is really why I was so happy walking around the show with you, because you could say, oh, this does this, and you could go up to people and say, and does your thing do this thing? And then I could hear how they talked about that, and it was very interesting to hear how people pitched. And the other thing I was very surprised with was how many times we went up to a booth and you asked a question and the person in the booth had no idea what you were talking about. And I'm just surprised that at a show that's supposed to be such a big technology show, and that anybody would put somebody in a booth that wouldn't be able to answer some, maybe slightly difficult but fundamental questions about their own products. That would seem to be a brand problem.
Well, so I think there's not enough expertise in cybersecurity in the world, right? So the demand's much higher than the supply, which would lead you to believe that a lot of the cybersecurity companies would be anxious to have people like you and me helping them out.
Yeah.
But of course, they all seem to believe, they have big egos. They all seem to believe that they know more than everybody else. And when they're faced with a question from somebody that they don't know how to answer, they think that the person asking the question is the problem.
Well, I'm thinking more like, if you're going to put people on your front line who aren't technical people, that's fine, but train them that when they get a technical question, they say something like, I'm not a technical person here. I handle X, Y, and Z. if you really want to know, I'll find a technical person for you, rather than looking at you like a deer in the headlights.
So some of them actually do that quite well, and some of them have the wherewithal to do that. And
Yes.
there's another problem, just the volume of people there, right? There are a lot of people there.
Yeah.
And so at the booth, even if they have 2 or 3 experts, they're engaged talking with people who are potentially real customers.
True. Trade shows are they're actually really difficult environments, I think, for companies to actually do business. And I think it's actually, maybe that's a weird upside of the coronavirus, is everybody starts thinking real trade shows, starts rethinking real trade shows. Because I've thought for years that, they're huge, they're expensive, they don't really seem to, in order to actually get good stuff out of a trade show, and I have run programs where we have done this, it's a huge amount of work. You may get 1,000 cards, and out of that 1,000 cards, 10 are going to end up being great customers. But to get down to that 10, I mean, you add that to the cost of the trade show and what the actual customer acquisition cost or something like that. I've never thought that trade shows were a really good investment.
So the thing that I think works a lot better, certainly in the cybersecurity field, is things like Cyber Senate.
Mm-hmm.
With these are meetings, they're professional meetings, right? And vendors are there, but the vendors are there giving talks. Another really good example was Catalyst, when Burton Group was around before it got acquired by Gartner, and Chrysalis, which I think I've talked about, which they the remnants of that, including myself, created afterwards. The point here is it's a more of a technical forum, and nobody standing up on stage is going to be advertising. And instead of having booths that people walk around in this huge volume of people, wafting through the thing, 95% of whom are just looking to see what's there. You have, a room, a vendor suite, and in the vendor suite, that's how you get your dinner and your evening drink, and you're there with the vendor, and they have their team of experts, there, and they're talking about, what they do in the context of the conference. So if the conference is talking about, some sort of access control approach, then there will be a vendor in the access control space that's a good vendor, maybe 2 or 3 of them in the room, but it turns it into an experience that's a learning experience, an interaction with your peers experience, and then you're building relationships with people. So instead of having 10, 20, 30,000 people at a show, you have a couple hundred people at the show, but those are the right people. Those are the people making buying decisions, and those are the people with outstanding products or services that are in the space, and there are already relationships between some of those pairings, and you can have a vendor and one of his customers up on the stage with an analyst talking to them back and forth, right? So it's really enlightening to that audience.
Yeah, and it may actually be advancing the field, as opposed to this, which is just another bubble in time.
Right. So the RSA conference also has talks, right? Yeah. So you saw the vendors. There are also talks. The problem is, the way they do their talks are, 500 or however many hundred people in the room, and the speakers are they don't have a diversity of speakers. Their selection process is really designed towards the corporate executive,
right,
speaking on behalf of his company, trying to generate sales instead of the other thing. They have some interesting speakers, but they have the same ones year after year. They have, in the big talks, the keynotes, they'll have somebody, really highfalutin. I mean, at one point I think they had Bill Gates, but Bill Gates, as rich as he is not a cybersecurity expert. Certainly, if he ever was one, he isn't anymore, because the field has progressed, right? And he's running. It's not what he does, right? And you have to do this bloody thing day after day to be good at what you do, and the world changes. So I think that those kinds of forums are poor for those purposes. On the other hand, it's probably not bad for you finding, potential customers for us. So how many potential customers did you find for us?
I came away with about 60 or 70 cards, I believe it was. And of those, I expect there's probably 12 to 15 that are actually going to make interesting prospects. And out of that, I expect we might get 2 or 3 that may actually turn into a longer term customer.
Now, you had some good conversations with some of them.
I did. I had some very interesting conversations, but I want to just follow up what you said, you've been talking about here for a second, which is the problem with big trade shows. Because I went to a trade show the following day, as a matter of fact, up in the wine country for one of our technology companies that makes a testing device for vintners, for winemakers. And that show was exactly what you were talking about. It was a couple hundred people. There were some vendors there. It was interesting stuff happening. There were breaks where people could actually mill around, and, of course, the winemaking industry. So everybody has to try the product and, be social and engage and meet people and do things like that. And it was just, I maybe came away with 12 cards out from there, but of those 12 cards, 10 of them are going to be valuable relationships. So,
right. And now this weekend you're going to the the fashion shows.
As a matter of fact, I'm going to be on a panel for a fashion show tonight, believe it or not.
Yeah. My intelligence network told me that.
Yes, I understand. And actually, speaking of intelligence networks, something really spooky happened to me today. I have a couple of different emails, and I know which emails I give to which companies. And Recode Decode, the famous Recode Decode, did something sneaky. They intuited one of my emails from another one of my emails, and they delivered spam into my email box this morning.
Right. Intuited is not the correct word.
Okay, what's the correct word?
Well,
inferred?
They connected. So,
okay.
So usually the manner for this, the mechanism for this is that they leave cookies on your system. Mm-hmm. And so they have a common company that's processing the cookies. So when you deal with them in one way or another, the cookies, like if you go to their website or any of their websites, the cookies associated with different email addresses associated with your accounts get correlated. So they can tell that this email address is, an email address used by the same system, logged in as the same user as this, cookie associated with that email address.
Yes, but Recode Decode did not have this for this one specific email. This specific email is very specific, and I know exactly who has it. And now apparently not.
Well, so the notion is that you think that's true.
Okay? I did until this morning.
Yeah, but the reality is right. But that's a cybersecurity problem, not really well, it is the subject of what we're talking about. But in terms of helping to grow cybersecurity companies, I'm not sure it'll help our audience to, figure out the details of how they did it. Not to mention they might have broken into somewhere and just stolen a bunch of records, but
which is not.
I should mention that anytime a company contacts me and says I want all of Adam's email addresses, I just give it to them.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Well, it also happens that you don't have this email address either.
Well, that's what you think, and I certainly wouldn't detail it to you.
I'm sure it wouldn't be difficult to intuit. So while we're talking about bad things companies do, talk to me for a second, Fred, about changing your passwords.
Do-si-do.
Talk to me about changing your passwords. Is it a good thing to do?
Well, so there are conditions under which you should be changing passwords. One of them is if somebody got one of your passwords.
Okay.
You should probably change it. But also you shouldn't be using the same password for multiple sites if they have substantial value. Right?
Right.
So there's a more fundamental issue, and that is, why do I need all these friggin' passwords? Right? If I go to some site, they make me have a password and log in. All I want to do is get access to something that they were, providing for free. But I had to do that so they could then sell to me later, which is why they were providing it for free. It's not free.
Right.
But of course, my stuff is free, and I don't ask for that stuff. You go to all.net or Angel Eggs, and I'm giving it out to the world. And I'm hoping that accrues positives to me, but also I'm trying to be helpful, legitimately.
Yes.
And so the result is this plethora of systems with passwords. So what happens is, Jojo wants to send me a PDF, so I say, okay, password, sure. My user, I need an email address that's valid, so I say fc@all.net. What's the password? I say fc@all.net. And surprise, surprise, people know that fc@all.net is the password for fc@all.net. At sites all over the internet, which I don't give a crap about.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. But you have to listen to the podcast. Don't write it down. Don't transcribe it. You have to listen to the podcast to find this out.
So anyway, the reason was these guys who I buy VPN services from came up with a pop-up window today or the other day that said, you have to change your password. And I wrote back to them and said, wait a minute, who says that? And they said, well, industry best practices. And so I channeled you for a minute. And I referred them to the NIST recommendation to not change your password.
Yes, the periodic changing of password that's the NIST recommendation. It took me 20 years to get that changed.
Well, so these guys think they know better than NIST.
Everybody thinks that they know better because they did it 20 years ago.
So I just, Nord guys, I love you guys, but you guys have been assholes about this, and I just want to let you know. Well, so now that we've used our public status to complain about one of our vendors.
People don't want to think and they don't want to rethink, right?
Exactly. One of the things I've discovered is that
password, you're set for the rest of your life. By the way, do you ever notice that there's no security requirement that ever has gotten removed in any site you've ever seen?
That's true.
Why is that?
That's very, and one of the things they tell us in order to stay active and healthy as we age, and I just had my 63rd birthday, is to constantly question your old assumptions. Don't assume that what you learned 30 years ago is still true today. Be at least open that you might be wrong about it and something might have changed. And
well, that's why I constantly do experiments with things like my websites where people keep telling me, oh, this is so 1980s. We keep saying, and I do experiments. I did an experiment, with sales and marketing with Go to Angel just in the last couple of weeks. This is a classic example, right?
Uh-huh.
So I'm always trying to find the price point, right? So what I did is I did an offer that said free.
Mm-hmm.
It's free this week. I had somebody who previously complained about the pricing, who read the thing that said it was free, came in and said, does this mean whatever happens afterwards, any work you ever do for me is free? And I said, no, we don't work for free. It's just this presentation. He said, well, I'm not interested. So there's that. But the question is, do I get more sales than when I give it away for free than when I charge $200? And the answer is I get more sales when I charge $200. Free is even worse than fee. Okay. And another one. So I had a guy that I don't want to name names. What he said was, $70 was his. They do pitches, and he said $70 and they give feedback. So $70 you present for 5 minutes, you get 5 minutes of Q&A, then you get 5 minutes of feedback. And he said no price resistance at $70. So I tried an experiment where I said, okay, here's a $70 option, here's the $200 option. And not one person took the $70 option. Mm-hmm. They asked about it, and then when they heard the difference, they said, oh, the $200, I don't want the $70. So it's like, you hear these things. The only way to find out is by experimenting, which I do.
Yes.
And so you say, oh, somebody complained about your website. Yeah, right. So I've done the experiment, and I do the experiment about, once every 2 years, and it never changes. The experiment is always that, no, the website has nothing to do with that. If they say it does, the reality is it's some other reason. They just said, oh, it's the website. I mean, that's the experiments I've done show that. But that doesn't mean it's always true or true for everybody. But I just think you have to do the experiments in marketing if you're going to succeed.
That's true. Single data points are only partially relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were telling me something about another company and then NIST, and obviously we're rocking and rolling through our time as we always do.
As we always do. And so as I've been doing my research, I actually found what I thought was one of the best kind of overviews of the space in general. And surprisingly, it came from the government, which is the GAO. And here they have kind of an issue summary of what they see as the issues, as the major cybersecurity issues facing the nation. And I thought, this is the kind of context that almost all of the cybersecurity companies we deal with need to be providing, because this is what's missing in their narrative. It's not.
Oh, no. They don't want to provide it.
Why is that?
Well, so if they're solving the improper usage problem, They want to say, oh, 22%, then they'll say it. But if you're charging solving the attribution problem, you don't want to say, well, less than 1% is due to attribution, but we solve it. So, oh, crap. So that's thing one, right? Because the statistics work against you. I also want you to notice the 31%, the largest chunk is other.
Right.
So we solve the other problem. That's 31% of the problem. A third of all the problems are other problems, not the ones that everybody else tells you about. We solve those. Oh, really? Well, this one? Oh, not that one. This one? No, not that. So,
no. This 1% isn't attribution. It's attrition, by the way.
I'm sorry. Less than 1%, by the way.
Yeah, but it's attrition, not attribution.
So the other thing is, all statistics, you got to really look at what it says, okay? So it says 35,277 total information security incidents, okay? This is reported by federal executive branch civilian agencies to DHS in fiscal year 2017. Okay, so first of all, only 35,000 incidents, you just must have no detection at all. Because the statistics, if you put a computer on the internet without any protection, and this is, as of a couple of years ago, but I'm sure it's got to be true today still. Within 30 seconds, somebody will have broken into it. Okay, within 30 seconds.
Oh yeah.
And I used to run a site where I kept track of all the different things happening, and it was a little site, not a big corporate site that lots of people come in, just an information site. It had 1 million attempts a day. So you're telling me across the whole federal executive branch, in a whole year, you only had 35,000 incidents.
Well, reported incidents.
Well, okay, so thank you. You've noticed the second problem. First of all, you can't detect them, or they haven't detected. The second one is, if you detect them and you don't report them, that's not counted. Okay. So this might represent 1/100% of all the actual incidents. So the statistics are not statistically valid, right?
well, hold on. So they're statistically valid against a certain subset of total attacks. So the 35,000 is certainly a statistically valid number to be able to say, out of this is what we found.
No, but the problem is, what can you use it for, right? So of the things that we were able to detect, that were detected, that were determined to be incidents, and that were reported, we then figured out that 1/3 of them were not categorized here, right?
Well, but hold on. Hold on a second, Fred. Hold on a second. So the issue here isn't, when I'm talking about using this as part of a narrative, I'm not saying that we're treating this as factual information. What I'm saying is, you could use this to frame the conversation about how cybersecurity needs to work out in the world. This is a sample of what we've got. These are the kinds of things that are happening, and this is how we solve this in this particular part. And then that provides people some context to what your particular solution is.
There's a SANS top 10 list that lots of people use. So there are lots of these things, right?
Yeah.
So there are hundreds of different reports that come out in any given year by different, levels of whatever.
Of course. That
claim different statistical information. So what you do, in what a lot of people do in sales and marketing, is they'll pick one that looks favorable, and they'll say, according to so-and-so, email and phishing attacks are responsible for 21% of the security incidents reported across the entire federal executive branch. a true statement, right?
No.
Yes.
No. These are just civilian agencies.
I said the federal executive
branch. This is not the entire federal executive branch.
Oh, so it doesn't include the military. Oh, God. Okay, it's even worse. Okay.
Well, right. That just goes to show you how me as a marketer, I would take this and frame it in a way that Fred would find absolutely horrible. And that's why we make you such a good team, because we'll tell you that both sides of the argument.
Well, so the thing is, you're always going to have some reference to some URL, which they'll never click on,
of course,
or almost never click on. And so you have a reference, and the reference is from the GAO, according to GAO, blah, blah, blah. And if they go to look it up, they'll find out that the words you used are different from the words that they used. And people like me will point it out, but most people won't notice it or care. But the question is, what's the effect? The effect is they say, oh, email and phishing is important. So here's the response that you get from the actual buyers, the people that make buying decisions from large enterprises. They say, anytime you cite a statistic like that, it's insulting to me, A, and B, I know you're an idiot, that you don't know what you're talking about. Okay. And the reason is, if you work for, and I'm just going to pick a random one, HP or IBM or whatever, and you're in charge of this, you have statistics. You have more statistics than the GAO ever saw, okay? Mm-hmm. By 20, 30, by several orders of magnitude, right? So an order of magnitude is a factor of 10. So 35,000. So we know companies that have, 350 million a day, different things that they detect, okay? So it's ridiculous. And they'll say, your statistics on email and phishing, first of all, to say email/phishing, there's also vishing, which is the voice version of that. And there's also farming, and then there's spear phishing. And so they'll say there's a list of 18 things. You haven't even broken it down into those. And the other one is, so what if there are incidents? What are the consequences? When we looked at this, the actual consequence was, physical attacks on human beings, stealing something from their pocket, caused 98% of the damage financially in these three industries. Why do I want your phishing thing? You don't even know what you're talking about. Okay, so that is the response you get from actual buyers when you come out with that garbage statistic. Okay?
Okay.
And I'm telling you this because A, I know it, but B, it's been published by some of the people that are in those decision positions trying to help vendors recognize how they should be talking to them, because they don't like being talked to, by vendors in stupid ways. It's like, can I help you be smarter so you don't pester me as much? So well, your turn.
What's my turn? So clearly there are a set of buyers like Fred and the people that Fred associate with, and there are a set of buyers who need context. So
so the difference here is who your target audience is.
Exactly.
Right. And so anybody that's a large enterprise, which is usually the first target selected because of the finances of how you make money and how much it costs you to generate those customers. So the vast majority of companies that you encounter at a place like the RSA show.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different markets that you can go after where this kind of thing sort of works to get you in the door. That was it.
Okay. Oh, that's it. Okay.
It's so unusual for me to actually stop talking like that.
So, and here's one of the benefits you get by working with Fred and I is that we have very different takes on this. And he's extremely cybersecurity oriented, and I'm cybersecurity proximate, let's call it that, and very much into storytelling. And the variation, I think, makes for an interesting, certainly, conversation, and we provide great service to our customers too.
Well, that's a nice way to say it.
I think so. Trying not to be obviously overly self-serving and honest about it.
No, you can be as self-serving as you want here. It's okay. Nobody's listening to these anyway.
Well, no, that's not true.
Actually, that's not true. That's not true.
We have followers now, so people are listening.
Well, no, so I have a mailing list, that when I send out emails that talk about these things, people click on the link and we get numbers on them. So and they sign up to those lists or end up signing. So there are several hundred, I believe, right now that are on the list that get those notifications explicitly about OSG. But do you have statistics from the website?
Not on top of my mind.
Okay, well, in any case.
But I know that the general trend is up and to the right.
And what are the dimensions here? What's up and down and right and left?
Volume is up and down, time is right and left.
So more volume with more. So it's flowing from left to right. It's a timeline going left to right.
Right.
And it's going up.
Right.
Okay, so it was at 0 when we started, and it turned into 1 like yesterday morning, and the trend is up, right?
Something like that.
Yeah. No.
You know,
So
statisticians.
the difference in presentation, the way you present it sounds, really good. And the way I present it sounds really bad. And so it's a fundamental, right? So I'm that fact-oriented guy. If it's 2.3, say it's 2.3. Don't say it's 2.30 if you don't have 100 samples, right? Because it's the precision's higher than the accuracy.
Right.
And you're the guy that says up and to the right.
That's right. And so we're wishing you all an up and to the right kind of weekend. This is Adam and Fred.
I want your weekend to be 2.3 times as good as your weekdays.
And there you go. And any basic economist will tell you that your time off is worth twice what you get paid. So thank you for joining us, everybody. We are
2.3 times, Adam. It's even better. 2.3 times.
We are Oya Security, and we're out.